Okay, I think I'm going to start recording because we are going to send this out if you missed it, which doesn't apply to any of you, but in case people out there in the cloud have missed it, we will record. We're going to go ahead and get started, and hopefully some more people will trickle in by the time I'm done talking and Emily starts talking. But for now, welcome to Pint-Sized Science Ghostnet Landscapes. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for letting us reschedule. We're all kind of living in an unprecedented time period that requires a little bit more grace than usual. So we appreciate everybody's willingness to meet us today instead of last month. For those of you that may not have been to a Pint-Sized Science Night, that's okay because we only had one last year before the pandemic happened. We had to shut them down. But these are designed to be a program that gives an inside look into cool environmental work that's being done in our community that's both accessible and intersectional. We're not going to shout scientific jargon at you. The goal of these talks is really to show off the diversity of ways that our community is tackling environmental issues in ways that might not be stereotypical or traditional as it relates to like environmentalism and stuff like that. So that's the goal, is giving people platforms to talk about the cool stuff they're doing that's related to the environment. Before we get started, I just have a couple of housekeeping things to go over. There's not a whole lot since you're all in your own houses and you know where your bathrooms are, but the big one that I already mentioned is that everybody should be muted right now, so we cut down on background noise while Emily's talking. But we really encourage you to use the chat to ask questions, to write down questions, think of questions, whatever, so that when we do unmute and have a Q&A, that we can have an active conversation. So if you're afraid you're going to forget until the Q&A is up, feel free to put it in the chat and either I'll read them and go through them, or you can use it to remember when it comes up. If this is your first time at a TRK event, then you might not know that we are a community-driven nonprofit dedicated to advocating for the environment through stewardship and education at events like summer camps and rain barrel workshops and Pint-Sized Science. We are a member-based organization, which means that support from membership donations goes a huge way towards helping us continue to work for the environment. If you're already a member, thank you. But if you're not a member, not only does that highlight your interest and support of our work, but becoming a member of TRK also gives you discounted member rates at other events like summer camps, rain barrel workshops, paddling trips during the summer, and boat rentals that we do at Cook Park. It's a really, we want to encourage that sort of a synergy between the memberships and like what you get out of it, but then also what we get out of it, because it really is a mutually beneficial relationship for everybody. So we really encourage everyone to consider becoming a member if you're not already at tualatinriverkeepers.org. And we want to extend a huge thank you to everyone who already donated while signing up to attend tonight. So thank you. All that being said, tonight's conversation is going to be with Emily Miller. She is a local artist whose Ghostnet Landscape project takes marine debris like discarded fishing nets out of the ocean and into art. We think this is a really cool way to incorporate environmental stewardship into other interests, and we have an extra investment in projects like this because most marine debris begins in rivers. Fishing nets maybe not so much, right? But a lot of marine debris starts somewhere, and we try to stop it before it gets out into the ocean. So without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to Emily whenever you're ready, if you want to give your presentation, and we will go for it.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Let's see. There we go. So this is about my project called Ghostnet Landscape. This is one of the many projects that I do as an artist, but it's become sort of central to my art practice over the last few years. It is a series of interactive community installations transforming marine debris into art. So a little bit about my background. I moved to Forest Grove, west of Portland from Kauai in 2014. And I've been an artist all my life in lots of different mediums. I paint, I work in ceramics, but I've always had an interest in ocean conservation, nature conservation, waterways, and also working with reclaimed materials. So all of that in my background really led me to this project being the perfect combination of everything that I love. So Ghostnet is fishing rope and net that's lost or abandoned at sea. And the way I came into this project in particular was the picture on the left is me on Kauai. I went back home from Forest Grove to Kauai in 2018 and connected with the local Surfrider chapter there and realized how much they were picking up off the beaches that was washing up from around the Pacific Ocean. It wasn't local, it was coming from thousands of miles away. And because of the way the currents run, it all ends up in Hawaii. They just happen to be at a collection point in the Pacific Ocean Gyre. So that sparked the idea for me as an artist to do more than make art with this, but to share with other people my experience of this huge pile of material that I saw as not only a problem, but also as potential. And what I do with it as an artist is make art. It was potential material. It was colorful and beautiful, to be honest, even though it was also a huge issue. So what I do with it in my own art is stitch baskets. And this is some of the work Surfrider does in Hawaii, collecting rope off the beaches. And it's also something that happens on the Oregon coast. So I work with Oregon groups as well. It's not so much of an issue because our currents here take things out to sea more than bring them back in the way they do in Hawaii. But there's still quite a lot in Oregon. I found that seeing it in person and actually getting your hands into it there's no way to duplicate that experience. I mean, I knew that this was an issue from media, from news coverage for years. And until I actually saw it and got my hands into it, I didn't get it in the same way. And I thought, I've always been interested in water conservation. I lived on Kauai. If I didn't get it in the same way that I did when I saw it, how can I expect anybody else to get it just by being told or just by being shown a picture? So I am now going to collect this gear and bring it to places where more people can get a chance to experience it. Again, not just as a problem, but also as potential to turn it into something new. In addition to beach cleanup groups, I'm also working with commercial fisheries. And this is me at a commercial fishery on the Washington coast. So this is not Ghostnet. This is actually a picture of responsibly recycled fishing gear. They're not abandoning it at sea, but it becomes a landfill issue because the nets are so huge that if fishermen want to responsibly recycle it, there are currently very limited options for doing that. And there are companies that are trying to figure out how to do things in an infrastructure level sort of way. But right now, there's no easy way for fishermen to say, look at this giant net I have. I'm going to take it to somewhere that I know about, and it's going to go into something better. That just doesn't exist at most fishing ports. One of the interesting things about working with the beach cleanup groups and the industry is I've experienced some hesitancy for that crossover. And I feel like that makes my position as an artist that much more important. That in the past, it's been sort of like, this is fishermen's fault. And fishermen who are trying to figure out a better solution for it are kind of, you know, they want to do the right thing, but they also don't want to keep being told it's their fault. So it's been interesting for me working with both sides. And I feel like the more that I see that, and the more that I see that everybody is really enthusiastic about finding a better solution, the more important it is for me to continue working with everybody to show the different sources of material and tell the different stories of where it all comes from, because it is not all Ghostnet. And it's every time I go somewhere new, I learn about a new perspective on this. And that's been really interesting. So this is a couple of process shots of the way that I work with it to make my baskets. I clean it in a livestock tank that's just water, just scrubbing it off. Usually the commercial rope is already pretty clean, but the Ghostnet is full of sand. Sometimes it's full of seaweed. And then I unravel it. It's a 3-strand rope into the pieces, which makes it easier to stitch on my sewing machine. So Ghostnet Landscape is it's a gallery exhibit where I'm sort of an artist in residence. So every day I'm in the gallery making these baskets. It doesn't start as a finished show. It's a process throughout the entire exhibit each time. And it's also a collaboration with visitors. So I've presented 3 major exhibits of Ghostnet Landscape in the Portland area since 2019. And this is opening night of the first exhibit. So this is a mix of Ghostnet and responsibly recycled commercial gear. And as you can see, there's a couple of baskets up sort of in the stage space, but mostly it's just raw material. And that is the experience that I want people to start with, is this pile of material and potential, because what I'm doing with it is not the only thing that can be done with it. What I want people to see is there's so much here. What can I do with it that's new and different? And I'm there sewing baskets as sort of an example. But it's really an invitation for visitors to become participants and have this hands-on, collaborative, creative experience to create whatever it is that they're inspired to create. There's so much of it. And every show I do, I bring in as much as I logistically can. I try and fill the space as much as I can with this stuff. There's plenty to go around. And that abundance and the fact that it's free really encourages a level of freedom and playfulness. And people are willing to experiment. It's not precious. It's, you can try something, and if it doesn't work, there's, why not? There's no downside to playing with it. And it also gives people a chance to do more than pick up one piece of material. It gives people a chance to really physically experience it with all of their senses. And that was another thing that was really important to me, that we think and learn with our whole bodies, and we problem solve with our whole bodies, not just by looking at things. So this is a free space for you to pick things up and dive in literally to the pile, and use all your senses to come up with something new. This is another view of the same first exhibit. I hosted around 24 artists and ocean lovers to actually actively participate. And this is a group who just naturally sort of came in and sat down. It was a single large group who came in together and worked on different projects and talked about different things to do with the project. So I really didn't want to dictate what happened in this space. I didn't want to assign people a project. I did have people unraveling rope if they wanted to help me with my basket making, but I really wanted to give people the opportunity to come up with their own ideas and make this really, I feel like it's the people who are aware of the Ghostnet issue. I feel like it so far has been framed as a really big problem, and it is. But I also felt personally like that wasn't helping me move forward with finding a solution. And for that reason, I chose to frame this exhibit in the context of a fun, hands-on, collaborative experience, because I felt like there has been a lot of space already dedicated to describing the problem, and that I could be more of service in thinking about new solutions. So I invited about 24, again, artists and different people to actually come and work in the space throughout the month and make things. A couple of artists actually built the entire stage set. I had performers who scripted the opening night performance, wearable art and jewelry, sculpture, so many different things that people brought to the table that they knew how to do that I don't know how to do. I still don't know how to make these things that they made. But that was really the point of the exhibit, is that I can't do this by myself. We need everybody on deck to come up with their own ideas and to contribute their own knowledge, and literally to make use of more material than I could alone. This is a image from the second exhibit that I did at the Campus Art Gallery at Pacific University in Forest Grove. So this was a little bit different of a collaborative process. Again, I was in the gallery space every day, stitching my baskets. And again, I had a big pile of material for people to work with. But this time, instead of inviting a specific group of artists to make work, I had large groups of students come in and do sort of group work together. So I had about 300 students and community members, and the prompt that I had was for everybody to make a fish. And they made very, very different fish from each other. And that was so amazing to see that everybody's mental image of what a fish should be was so unique. And this was not, I didn't specifically invite art classes. It was classes from all across the spectrum: environmental studies, philosophy, education. Hispanic Club came in and did decorations for Dia de los Muertos, general freshman seminar classes. It was, everybody has creativity. Creativity is not limited to artists. And this was a fun opportunity for everyone to play with it. So there's some more of the fish and students working in the space. We had all ages come in, different things that were made. Again, everybody brought their own skills, people who knew how to knit, or a couple of people made cat scratching posts, hammocks. And I just tried to facilitate letting it evolve throughout the course of the month and give people the tools in the space that they needed to carry out their ideas, whatever they were. There's different sizes of net, different kinds of rope. So there was a lot of really active physical problem solving happening, which I think is an important part of the mental problem solving work that we focus on more when we think about how do we tackle issues like waterway pollution. But I think getting your hands into it, I mean, as an artist, I suppose I'm biased, but I really feel like having the physical problem solving actively alongside the mental problem solving helps a lot. This was a couple of installation images from that same exhibit at the university. So I bring in thousands of pounds of material. I can't carry it in by myself. So just setting up the exhibit becomes a collaborative experience. And everybody realizes when you start pulling on this stuff, you can't move it alone. You have to work together. There is no other way. And when you work together, it's fun. So one of the most impactful experiences I had was when I asked this group of local students in Forest Grove why they should care about Ghostnet in the ocean. Forest Grove is far enough away from the Oregon coast that it can be easy to forget how close we are to the ocean and how much we all live on an ocean planet with almost 3/4 of the world is ocean, and our rivers are all directly connected. So we all know that, but it's still easy to not see it when you don't see the ocean in your daily life. So I thought, these students don't live by the coast. Why should they care? I asked them. And what I loved about this was that they didn't have any hesitation about answering that. They started to explain to me how our ecology and our economy are all connected beyond our local imagined boundaries worldwide. They understood that most of our planet is water. They understood how microplastics are entering the base of the food web and having the potential to affect all of us. They understood global fishery management affecting everyone's access to food. And they also said, we don't realize how much we have until it's gone. And I thought that was a really amazing and insightful response from a group of students who don't live right on the coast, and this is not washing up right in their backyard. But they got that it is all connected, and we are really close, truly, to needing to, for all of us to take care of most of the planet being water. So these same students were also some of the most naturally playful and collaborative groups I hosted. And it was really interesting for me, without that much of a teaching background, to see how their ability to be flexible and silly and imaginative corresponded to their ability to have that empathy and connection with issues beyond their immediate experience. And that was sort of what made me start thinking more about Ghostnet Landscape, how important it is that this space is a space to be playful and creative with these issues, even though they can be really weighty issues. That ability to play and be flexible gets us forward to new solutions and understanding. So this is my most recent exhibit. Ghostnet Landscape was called Sea Stories in October 2020. So this was held during the pandemic, and it was sort of reimagined because these big groups of people can't get together in person and all be handling the net. But I really still wanted to move forward with that. The ideas of collaboration, playfulness, new solutions to massive global issues, I felt like that's something that does need to be addressed in 2020. So we figured out how to do it as a socially distributed community project, as accessible as possible to as many people as possible during COVID. I also felt like people needed a safe place to have a voice over the past year, and that Ghostnet Landscape could be a chance for different voices to be heard in more of a way than it had in the past. So this was actually hosted at a cafe in Southeast Portland, Crema Cafe. And I partnered equally with two other artists to present this for the first time, a weaving expert, Shelby Silver, and a puppetry expert, Cher Coleman. So the big windows that you can sort of see under the title are street facing, and we were working sort of staggered separately in this space, so people could look in from outside and see us making art inside. I was sewing, Shelby was weaving or spinning, we were filming the puppet shows, so people could see it, and also in the takeout line. There was also an outdoor component. So this is Shelby, the weaving expert, brought this outdoor installation titled We've Made Our Bed to the blocked off pedestrian access area outside of the cafe. And two of Portland's resident mermaids visited it, and it was up for about a week. So people had a chance to experience it outdoors as well. The puppet show was the big no contact part of the project and the storytelling part of the project. So we put together 90 free kits of reclaimed fishing gear with simple instructions, how to make a puppet, how to tell a story, and invited the public to make their own puppets out of this gear and tell their story of creative transformation. And that's the puppet expert, Cher Coleman, in the background, led the stage and story production for this. So we filmed all the puppet stories and that were submitted and broadcast them with subtitles on a street-facing TV so people could see them without having to hear them. And we also put them up online. We had about 25 stories submitted, and 9 of the stories were produced as season 1. And here are some screenshots from the season 1 stories. So these are all submitted by different people. Some of them I know, some of them I don't. I really wanted it to be an anonymous opportunity. If people didn't want to put their names on it, they didn't have to. So some of them were just dropped off in a bag, and I don't know who they are, but it was really fun to bring them all to life with the written stories and just the puppets, adding our backgrounds and doing the voices. And all of that work was a collaboration between about 4 to 6 people doing all of the different pieces to bring it together into a final finished video product, including subtitle translation to Spanish on some of the videos. So I was in charge of matching different, the voices, the translations, the set creation, the filming and everything for each video. And I really tried to get each video to include a diversity of participants in age, ethnicities, gender identities, urban and rural collaborators. As much as I knew, I really wanted each video to be a product of different experience put together. I also feel like this really shows, I didn't ask people to tell stories about the ocean specifically. Some of them chose to, not all of them, but I felt like the storytelling part of this was a way to move more into Ghostnet Landscape not being just an art project about ocean plastic, but more really centered on the invitation to create that space for transformative storytelling and a creative future where art is something that allows you to think about what you want the future to be in the work that you create. And I wanted this storytelling opportunity to just create that space for people. I also just feel like it's really important to share that I really love doing this. And that's so important to the project. And it's the reason that I'm able to keep doing it, because what we do in support of conservation, I feel, has to be personally sustainable as well as environmentally sustainable. And this gets me up in the morning. I mean, it's so much fun for me to work with this material, to work with the community and see what different things they come up with to do with this stuff that I never would have thought of. And I think especially with a lot of the really weighty issues that we're aware of now, maybe more so than before that we had been aware of, it's really important to keep that joy in order to keep going long term, is what I found for myself. And it seems like it works well for other people too. I haven't really seen a joy-centered space created for this sort of stuff before, where fun and experimentation and forward thinking is really the point, more so than solving a concrete like, what am I going to do with this piece of rope is equally important as the idea of transformation in general, and the idea that people can take that forward to whatever it is that they are most passionate about and apply those ideas in the same way. So the project website is ghostnetart.com, and there's a lot more about the 3 exhibits and the other work that I've done on there. It is a traveling project, and my goal is to work with new communities to share their unique experiences on this global issue. I'd love to hear ideas about where you think the installation should travel next and which communities would benefit most from having this opportunity. I'm also seeking grant funding to produce Sea Stories Season 2 with more of the puppets and stories that were submitted during the October 2020 exhibit. We had 25 submitted and only were able to film 9 of the stories, so there's plenty more content. And if you'd like to support the project's overall mission, I have Ghostnet baskets and also books about the exhibition available on the website.
Cool. I think so. We're gonna go from here into a bit of a conversation for the rest of the remaining time that we have. I want to kick it off by saying I had a similar experience to you, Emily, about realizing just the sheer amount of marine debris that exists. It's really, really difficult.
Yeah.
It's really hard to figure out a way to translate that experience to people who didn't have it. So for background, before I started working at Tualatin Riverkeepers, I worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in Hawaii. And one of our jobs was that we would partner with NOAA, and we would literally go on like boats, like big, like ships, not boat, but like, you know, marine ships, and just go.
That's like my dream job.
I think they take volunteers. You should like look at it and see if they would.
I should.
They go around the Hawaiian Islands, like not just the main 7, but like into the northwestern ones too. So they go up through the whole thing and they collect marine debris. That is what they do once a year. And it was bizarre being in places that literally are closed to the public. Like people cannot physically be on those islands without permission from the US Fish and Wildlife Service. And there was still marine debris. And so like that to me was my big thing where I was like, man, like this is a problem. So yeah, I feel you on figuring out a way to have that experience for you and then get other people to have that experience when it's just really, really hard to articulate exactly how that feels when it's not, you're not there.
Should I stop screen sharing?
Yeah, you can do whatever. If you want to stop screen sharing, you can do that. So that was my comment about my experience here. But so at this point, everyone who's still here, if you want to unmute yourselves and you can raise your hand on there's a little reaction button next to where the screen share button is that'll let you do that. Or we can just try and be civilized and take turns. But otherwise, if anyone has any questions or comments that they want to bring up to kick off the conversation, please feel free to. Otherwise, Emily and I can just keep talking and you can listen to us.
Well, if nobody wants to jump right in, I'll start off by
hand raised, but I don't know who it is.
Are you unmuting yourself, Gwen?
I can unmute myself to ask.
Yeah.
So I go to Pacific University.
Hello.
Hi. I think I'm the only one of us who showed up. I was wondering if you have any thoughts about like opportunities at Pacific or like within the kind of Forest Grove community to contribute to environmental activism at all?
You know, the Students for Environmental Activism Club, SEA? Are you familiar with that?
I am not familiar with it.
Okay, I have no idea what's going on with clubs this year at Pacific. So I graduated in 2016, but I've been a pretty active alumna since. But because there's no in-person stuff happening, I don't know what they're doing, but I know that club exists. And in 2019, when I did the show at Pacific, they came in and actually hosted an entire evening for the club. So that would be a good place to start. Outdoor pursuits, again, right now, I don't know what they're doing, but they probably would have some ideas too. And Dana, I would say in general for the region beyond Pacific, that's you, that's Tualatin Riverkeepers.
Yeah, I'll shamelessly plug for now, in the fall, we do a river paddling cleanup trip. So it's kind of like a solve thing on the beach, except we get in canoes and kayaks and stuff and pick up stuff in the river. And that would be a really, we don't do any art aspect of it like Emily does. That's a good place for you to start if you're interested in picking up or preventing marine debris from completing its whole life cycle, because that's like we kind of touched on earlier, right? That's why Tualatin Riverkeepers cares about this kind of thing, is that there's a huge level of connectivity with waterways. So it's really easy to live in Forest Grove or in Portland and think about, I live in Portland, so my watershed isn't even the Tualatin River watershed, right? But like what happens in the Willamette, it carries through to the Tualatin, and then it carries through to the Columbia, and eventually gets out to the ocean, right? So if you're looking for little ways to kind of individualize your impact, finding cleanups like that is a really easy way to do that. And we are one of the only organizations that I'm aware of that does one on the water. So
where do you launch from?
It depends on the year. I'm not the coordinator of that particular program. So it's usually somewhere in Tualatin because that's where we store the boats, but it depends. So it's usually in September though. So if you keep tabs on our website or social media, we'll post about when we're doing it. So please feel free.
Perfect. I will check that out. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mariah?
Yes. Hi, Emily. First, hi. I love your artwork.
Thank you.
And it's amazing art. We're new-ish to the area. We've only been here for a couple of years, and I'm trying to get more aware of nature here. We come from basically a desert, is where we came from. So I also have a daughter, a little girl, who is so drawn to water. She's a little young, but she won't be that way forever. And I'm just looking at everything you do going, how can I plug her in? Because she's going to want to do art with that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I'm almost like, how is there some way of getting her, in a couple of years involved in a process of making art with this stuff?
How old is she?
Lovely to come to your shows and pay you to do all the art, but she might want to do
Yeah, how old is
be a
she?
helper or something. Right now, she just turned 7, so we're talking. Oh, she isn't. Okay.
No, kids love this stuff. And when I did the show at Pacific University, some of the most amazing fish that I had made were made by 6s and 7s with an adult helper to help cutting and tying. But it's and they love playing in the material too. That joy of just diving in is something that you want to keep going for sure. So right now, I'm not doing that level of physical public engagement, but I will be again in the future. I have hope, I believe. So
if you have some sort of sign up place so that we can stay in the loop, I'd love to, because
on the website ghostnetart.com, you can sign up there, and when things are happening again, then I'll be sending out information. Right now, I'm trying to think where on the Oregon coast would be like you're likely to find something, but that's actually something that I think it was not the Pacific Environmental Club. I think it was actually hosted through Freshman Seminar, but they had a group of students who went out as a group to the Oregon coast and participated in Solve's beach cleanup. So Solve is, I don't know if I remember what the acronym stands for, but it's like our local community sort of, I don't know if they're government, maybe sort of beach cleanup. There's one in Portland.
We were going to do that last year, and then everything kind of stopped right as it was about to happen.
They're doing it this year.
Oh, okay.
In sort of a limited capacity, but it's happening fairly soon, I think. So that information should be on their website. But if you don't want to be involved with a bunch of people all doing the same thing on the same day, any day, especially after a storm, if you take a drive out to the coast and just walk the beach with a bag and look for stuff that's not natural and think about what you might be able to do with it besides throw it in the trash. And I guarantee you, your daughter will have some awesome ideas.
I'm sure she will. I can't keep her out of my recycle bin as it is. I'm like, no, that's trash. Let it go. Let it go.
And she's like, what is trash? What does that mean?
No, I could make art with it.
Yeah.
We have an apartment. We can't keep everything. But this is beautiful. This isn't a rambler.
In an apartment.
Oh.
That was a challenge. And I wish I had photos of all of this stuff in the apartment. But then we moved, and I have a garage for the first time in my life. And clearly the first thing to do with it is fill it with fishing gear. That's what you do when you have a garage.
Sure. Anyway, I'm going to let somebody else go. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Gwen.
Hi. Okay. I was going to say, hi, Emily. How's it going?
Good.
I was going to say, especially for people like Maria who have children, the videos that you guys did of the puppets, those are still up on the website, correct? Are they available for people to view, and how do they view them?
Yes. Thank you for that. So on the website, ghostnetart.com, are all of the season 1 of Sea Stories, which is the 9 community submitted puppet story videos that we were able to produce. And they're hosted on YouTube. They're free to watch. And they're also subtitled, but they're spoken, they're acted as well. So that will be fun for her to see and think about making her own puppets and maybe doing her own puppet show.
They're really fun. You should definitely check them out.
Yeah, we'll send out a link to those videos when we send out the link to this recording too. So we'll try and promote a little bit of the Ghostnet stuff too. So if you forget to go to Emily's website, hopefully you'll double them up and we'll get someone in there. So Ashley has a question from the chat, Emily.
Do I have a
She wants to know
favorite
if you have a favorite
puppet?
puppet.
Oh wow, that's a tough one. I kind of feel like that's like, do you have a favorite child? I don't know if I can answer it because they're all so great in different ways. And I feel like the puppets that we selected for season 1, I tried to have shorter stories and longer stories and stories that were about a variety of different things and approach the topic in different ways. And because I was the videographer for all of them and the video editor, so I had so much investment into looking at these things for hours and hours on end. And each one of them came to life in such a beautiful way and such a unique way. I feel like every time we got a new submission of a new puppet, it became my favorite. Watching them all come in and then come to life with the stage and story expert Cher's expertise and the set backgrounds that she designed for each one of them and the weavings that we put behind them too. So I don't know. They're all so different. I'm looking at my notes with the slide with all 9 of them and I'm like, the dragon, no, the little bird, no, the fish. No, I don't know. But again, that was really the central part of this whole project for me. I didn't make any of those puppets. I just provided the platform for other people to go wild with this very simple structure of, I didn't give people instructions on what story to tell or even how to make their puppets, how they should move or anything. I just said, here's a basic prompt. What are you going to give me back? And what I got out of that was this joy of seeing everybody's ideas that I never would have come up with.
Cool. I have, I think, a question that could be a longer conversation that I'm happy to start now because we have about 12 minutes left before it hits 7 and I want to respect everybody's time. But if anyone else has any last minute questions that they want to ask before I launch into my big question. Going once. All right, so I know we talked a bit before when we were setting this up about how sometimes it feels like there's like environmental waste and pollution and climate change are all such huge global problems that no one can really solve by themselves. And regardless of how true or not that is, there's a whole, have you heard of the term climate anxiety? No, it's a whole new
anxiety, climate grief.
Yeah, so it's a whole new like clinical diagnosis of anxiety that's specifically related to like knowing that we're kind of on a fast track to a very problematic future, and it just gives people anxiety to know that like your actions aren't enough and like no one is doing anything and like what do I do, and it gets really, really overwhelming. So I'm wondering if you want to expand a little bit on how this was kind of your answer to your individual action and where you sit. Like, how do you see yourself contributing to that whole problem? How do you keep up the joy and positivity that you talked about, and all those things that kind of go into combating this whole climate anxiety thing that we're all sitting with?
Yeah, thank you. For sure. This Ghostnet Landscape is my direct response to my personal struggle with climate anxiety and the feeling that there is no amount of difference I can make that will solve this problem, that will solve any of the huge issues that we're facing as a planet. No matter how much I do, I'm not going to fix it. And that is a lot of weight to carry. And even when you're trying to do things that you feel like do make a difference, you're still carrying that weight. And I think my struggle with that is the reason why I do Ghostnet Landscape, because it is a community-centered project. So I am not carrying it alone. The point of it is that I physically can't move this much material by myself. I can't make all of this art by myself. I can't distribute the material by myself. And I think that making that part of the public presentation has been really important, for me to just show that like I am not the one doing all of this. It's something that we all have to do together. And like with the 200 fish that we made at Pacific University, I had a couple of people come up to me with their fish at the end of the session and say like, is this even good enough? Like, is this even a fish? And I was like, I love your fish so much. Yes, your fish is more than enough. It's going up with the team. And the difference between their one thing that they had just been laser focused on making themselves, and then seeing it with the other 200 creations, and realizing like it's sort of a cliche that your one action contributes and makes a difference, but you can actually see it in an exhibit like that. And you can see it in an exhibit where you have to help haul in the material, you have to help haul it out, or it literally will not get done. I think that helped me with feeling like not only do I not have to do this alone, it's not possible. And it's not fair to carry that weight of feeling that way all the time when you are trying to do something. And I think that's why I really wanted to focus this exhibit on joy and transformation, because a lot of the facts that we get about these issues are just dropped on us in that very weighted way and then left there without any like, okay, how are we supposed to deal with this, knowing that we can't just fix it by ourselves. I also feel like it's been important for me to share, and other people have reacted in a really positive way to this. So it's like, it's always, I guess, a little scary for me to share. Like, I don't consider myself an eco warrior. I drive a car, I eat fish, I use plastic, and some of it goes in the trash. So I am participating in our modern society that is creating this problem. And doing Ghostnet Landscape doesn't cancel it out, but it's sort of made me think about all of that in more of a systems-based way of like, yes, I can go ahead and feel guilty about every piece of plastic I throw in the trash if that's helpful to me, but it really isn't. It honestly is paralyzing. And I feel like Ghostnet Landscape is a way to break free of that paralysis and give myself more grace to make changes in the rest of my life that are positive without feeling sort of pushed into it, and sort of shamed into it. I mean, there's a lot of other shame issues in our culture that are, I feel like, really parallel with the onset of eco anxiety, where it's, if you just tell somebody that they're wrong and they're doing something wrong and what they're doing is creating things that are wrong, they might understand that and believe it, but I think it makes it difficult to think about a positive, transformative solution to the thing they're doing that is wrong.
Yeah, you got to totally give them something to like strive towards. You can't just say, don't do this. Like, if you don't have any kind of action, then what are you supposed to do except for just feel bad about it?
Then you just feel bad, and that's the end of it. So yeah, I feel like there's been a lot of that beginning part that already exists in our sort of collective consciousness, and there's been less of the what do we do next. how do we move forward? How do we find joy? How do we turn this into something that you want to get up in the morning and do? So not to disregard the reason why I'm doing this in the first place is because it's a problem, but I feel like I can make more of a difference in focusing on the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's interesting because I understand how much of a problem it is, but it also is beautiful and fun to work with. And when I see a piece of it on the beach, I'm like, yes, more material to make art, even though it's such a complicated material. But I feel like it has such a story
Mm-hmm.
of its own to tell physically, and knowing its history in our culture. But it's also like the pieces are all weathered and unique, and they're fried into knots, and each one is already kind of a work of art already.
Totally. Yeah. When you do in the before times and you would have exhibits and stuff, would you ever talk about what like a next step to do that's like higher up would be, I guess? Because that's kind of my thought. Like I know like when I used to do education around stuff like that, and you'd always tell people like turn off the lights before you leave the room, and I felt so bad because deep down I'm like, I'm not gonna cancel out all the oil that people drill. So do you ever consider that just like by having those kind of conversations in your exhibits, that by raising that awareness of like what we really need to do is make the nets not be in the ocean, right? Like do you think that ever comes across to other people that you talk to?
Yeah, people generally approach that by asking me for a list of companies that are doing the work for that. And honestly, it's new. There are companies doing that work. I am not super informed to provide that list. I do have some links on the project website, ghostnetart.com, to some companies that I'm aware of, but I'm not the resource for that. I feel like I almost don't want to tell people this is what you need to do to keep the nets out of the ocean. I feel like my position is to demonstrate how to create a space where people can think of new ways to keep the nets out of the ocean that I haven't thought of and that nobody else has thought of, or whatever issue it is that people feel most strongly about, that just gets them out of bed in the morning wanting to go do it. I'm trying to get this to the point where it really is transparent as a model of thinking and action that generates a different way of thinking about environmental issues and any sort of these global issues that we're facing, of creating open space for people to feel safe to have new solutions. So I almost feel like I don't want to give people an answer.
No, I think that's perfect because first of all, we only have 2 more minutes. So I want to make the point that point you just made about giving people space to have different and weird and non-traditional solutions is the point of Pint-Sized Science, is we're trying to give people platforms to talk about thinking about things in diverse ways, and to talk about asking people who maybe don't have a background that might have a weird idea that could solve the whole thing, right? Like that is genuinely what we're trying to do with this platform, is to highlight all these new and innovative and out of the box ideas. So I 100% agree with that sentiment. So Emily, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah, all your stuff is super cool, and we'll be sure to send out links to ghostnet.com and all that stuff when we do like a recap email that comes out soon. Other than that though, please check both of our organizations out, because it sounds like we have some cool stuff that we could be working on that's related. Come on a paddle with us, pick up some garbage, go to a show when we're allowed to be in person again, and have a lovely rest of your guys' evening.
Thank you.